7th September 1812. The stage is set for the largest battle yet seen in the history of the Napoleonic Wars. 250,000 Russian and French men, 50,000 horses, 1,200 cannon. French Emperor Napoleon I has been pursuing the Russians relentlessly in his invasion. Barclay de Tolly, commander of the Russians, has utilized the attritional Fabian strategy, continuously avoiding battle. In such a manner, Napoleon's Grande Armée has been whittled down. Less than half of it is actually French. The rest is composed of units like Eugene's Fourth Corps, including the Italian Royal Guard, Joseph Napoleon's Spanish Regiment, the Portuguese under Ney's III Corps, Prince Poniatowski's IV Corps, and the Vistula Legion of the Imperial Guard, all Polish men. Westphalians, Bavarians, Württembergers, Saxons, and the Dutch, many of them in the Guard cavalry. Field Marshal Mikhail Kutuzov has now been appointed command over the Imperial Russian Army. Here he will make his stand on the carefully selected ground east of Borodino. Further north at Gorki, Kutuzov and his chief of the general staff, Bennigsen, overlook the battle. Their goal? To destroy the enemy at Borodino, while grinding him to death in the center. Just west of the Kolocha River and Borodino lay Raevski's battery, sitting atop the formidable Great Redoubt. To the southeast were some smaller redoubts. The French called them les Flèches, arrowheads. General Bagration was in charge of this Russian Second Army, using the Flèche to defend Seminoskoye. With him he had the elite Russian Life Guard regiments, held for now in reserve. Further south was the Utitsa Mount, defended by Cossacks, some dismounted. It was intended to be a diversion on the flanks. Indeed, the main Russian assault was to fall on Borodino itself, sustained by some of the best infantry and grenadiers. Barclay de Tolly oversaw this, intending to use his forces and Cossack cavalry to strike and raid deep into the French rear. Napoleon commanded his side of the battle from Shevardino. First, Napoleon dispatched Eugene's corps of Italians to take up positions around Borodino. There they would take the brunt of the Russians, but could defend and distract them from the center. Perhaps too hasty, Napoleon then ordered the highly capable Poles of 5 Corps onto Utitsa under Poniatowski, falling for Kutuzov's diversion. As such, they did not become available until much later in the battle. Davout's suggestions to the French Emperor of a funneling attack through Borodino's bridge or a wide outflanking maneuver past Utitsa were dismissed out of hand as too risky. As such, Napoleon was left with one mode of attack: frontal assault on Kutuzov's redoubts. The Battle of Borodino began at 6 AM with the usual exchange of artillery fire. Napoleon's guns were amassed into his signature Grand Batteries, aiming to mitigate the superiority of Russian firing positions. The first musket fire was over the pontoon bridge to Borodino, as the Russians began their attack. Audacious or reckless, the French army now began to march on the Flèches and the Great Redoubt. The artillery took its toll. Already Napoleon's forces were being cut to smithereens. But then the sound of horses, thundering hooves. But where these flanking attacks were more successful was on the French right flank, against the Flèches. On the whole, however, the Russian line was holding. The French were the ones faltering. At the behest of his marshals, Murat, Ney, and Davout, at last Napoleon agreed to commit his reserves, the Imperial Guard. Murat, King of Naples and commander of the Cavalry Reserve, was now primed to make his move. The charge of the Grenadiers à Cheval of the Old Guard and the Cuirassiers. Stopped at last by the Life Guard, which formed infantry squares. A Russian countercharge beat them back. In the confused, vicious melee, Murat himself was cut down. Still, enough damage had been done to the Russian left. Les Flèches, the Redoubts, had fallen. With the momentum now in French hands, the Imperial Guard was tasked with pushing on against Bagration's secondary lines, all the way to Sirnori. In a bid for time to redeploy, Bagration ordered his cavalry to sally out, which had been covered by the woods. It was ultimately a sacrificial move. At Borodino, Kutuzov's main thrust finally succeeded. The diversionary force of Cossacks at Utitsa broke too against the force of Poniatowski's Poles. When he saw the wood for the trees, namely that this was a diversion, there was a long march ahead. A forced march, in fact, for the Poles to rejoin the battle. Recognizing that this may well be the decisive moment, Marshal Ney urged on the attack, joining the front lines to rally the troops. Tragically, he was shot dead, caught in a Russian counterattack. One of the brilliant moves by Bagration during this battle, an ad hoc force of Opalchini militia, stragglers and the routed were assembled, striking on the French from the left flank and reoccupying the Great Redoubt. French horses now rushed for the woods, the same woods Russian cavalry had attacked from. Alas, it was too predictable. They met a well-prepared Russian force, one that would witness the end of the Guard cavalry. The Tully's forces, which had captured Borodino, were now making their way over, so the charge of these, yet unspent reserves, was all the more devastating for Russian morale. A decisive double pincer. Bagration is said to have yelled out in exasperation, "Where on earth did they come from?" Large-scale retreat is ordered. In tandem, the French chasseurs-flanqueurs of the Guard pursue relentlessly. And at last, Poniatowski's grenadiers arrive after an exhausting forced march. The The Russian refuge, if it could be called that, was to be at Gorki. Resistance remained tenacious. Overseeing the taking of Gorki, Napoleon could only see in the one thing fiercer than the Russians: the Gardes Impériales. The young guard is brought near to rout in brutal house-to-house fighting. The houses of Semyonovskaya change hands more than once. Lost by the young guard, it is then recaptured by the Vistula Legion. A wounded, desperate Bagration joined the fray, and perished at the end of a French bayonet. Borodino's greatest irony is that the French now occupied the great Redoubt, using it to shoot down Russian survivors. Without the guard on either side, or the valor of their cavalry, Borodino could have been an altogether different battle. Murat, Ney, and Bagration had died. 40% of the Grande Armée had become casualties, 50% of the Russians. Of the 50 battles I fought, the most terrible was that before Moscow, Napoleon's description of the Battle of Borodino.